Hey friends, I'm really excited to be here with you guys today. If you guys don't know me, I'm Alicia Colon. I'm a photographer based out of Savannah, Georgia. I do a lot of lifestyle, a lot of modern photography, but every once in a while, I'll get kind of like the random request. And that random request this week was, hey, Alicia, will you shoot my concert? Well, yes, I will shoot your concert. Actually, it's not that odd of a request. My good friend Thomas, he's a musician. He's been traveling around and he's been getting to know these like really rad like musicians that have worked with the people like Alice Cooper and AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, Aretha Franklin. Like just like it's crazy just the amount of artists that he has got to know. And so what he does is that he brings some of them back, creates a band, and then performs for us in this very small historic venue. So let me just show you a sample of one of the photos from a previous concert. So this is a very small venue. I don't know really how many people this holds, maybe 200. But it is historic. It's 1950s. I'll show you the exterior of here in a minute. But all of these different like musicians come from all of these different bands, and they end up coming together to form a lot of songs that we know. And when you guys are like dealing with concert photography, what I love about it is that it's very colorful, it's very energetic, and at the same time there's also a lot of haze and like lighting effects and whatnot. And when like if a photographer, if you just use like natural lighting, which of course this is what I use, I'm not going to be bringing my flashes to this, it can create a lot of intrigue, right? But sometimes what ends up happening is that I want to go ahead and I want to jazz things up a little bit. So from there, what I'll end up doing is I'll create like some double exposures from some of the images. I want to create more of the vibe, more of the feel of what we're creating. And so this right here was done completely in camera, and I absolutely love it. So it's just one of those where I just take two images and I just put them right on top of each other. And I think the blues and the yellows definitely complement each other here. So what I want to show you guys really is what happens after I take the photos and I'm going through all of the images. All right, so we're going to go ahead. We're going to dive into Lightroom today. This is where we're going to spend pretty much our whole entire time together. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of show you guys just like the grid. So the request here with this particular project was, hey, and this is Thomas, this is my friend. Hey, I want you to come. I want you to capture essentially the vibe of the building. So here's the vibe of the building. The people who are here, he has some regulars that always come. He ends up doing a like solo show. So this is like the solo part. After the solo part, he ends up doing a Q&A with all of these different instrumentals. This gentleman right here that was talking was the drummer for Alice Cooper for a little bit, so that's really fun. And then from there, we end up going into like the actual show itself. Now, some of the times when like I'm taking these photos, I get special requests like, hey, Alicia, we are sponsored by Trinity Symbols. Can you please make sure that Trinity Symbols has some like product placement? Yes, I can definitely do that. Hey, Oliver, good to see you. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me. If you guys have any questions on how I shoot any of this, if you're wondering what my settings are, how I'm going from super wide angle to, very close, let me know. Okay. But that is definitely something that whenever I'm photographing, I want to make sure that I get many different angles. I don't want to get super close-ups. I don't want to just get all wides. I want a variety, right? Whenever we go through. Hey, Jennifer. Hey, Clever. Okay. So let's go ahead and the first one that I'm going to go through and I want to go ahead and edit for you guys is this image right here. Okay. So this is a 1950s theater in this like one block like main downtown. You can see how small this is, but I absolutely love the vibe, right? So I created this, and I when I crafted this image, I wanted it to be a little bit underexposed in order for us to kind of keep the highlights in the sky, because I thought the sky was absolutely beautiful. And then on top of that, I did want there to be some like light happening in the front. So I'm going to go ahead. First thing that I always do whenever I'm editing anything in Lightroom is I like to remove chromatic abrasion and also enable any of my lens correction stuff, right? So sometimes, depending upon your lens, there's always going to be some warp and some distortion. And so I love to be able to correct this. Now, sometimes, however, when you're doing like dark portraiture, if you do the dark portraiture and you end up doing enable lens correction, what will happen is that like is that vignette, it's a natural vignette that happens with your light, with your lenses. The light actually will end up decreasing naturally around the edge. When you click that enable lens corrector, it will actually artificially brighten up. Now, when you're doing a portraiture, that sometimes does not look good. So there might be some instances where that is not a good decision to enable that lens correction. So okay, Jennifer asked me, did you have any control over the lighting, or did you rely on natural lighting? So this is 100% natural lighting for me. In order for someone to let's see, to book me, there's two different prices. There's the, hey, do you want me to bring my studio? I can do that, and it's going to be a lot more expensive, or I can just do natural lighting. So with event photography and concert photography, 9 times out of 10, it's always just natural light. It's whatever the light is already there. Okay, so let's go ahead and edit this image. So I'm going to go ahead, and the first thing that I want to do is I want to correct this. It is definitely kind of leaning. So I'm going to go to my geometry over here. I'm going to click, it's right above my head. I don't know if you guys can see it, but there is like a little, I don't know, little crosshairs. And I'm going to essentially draw my horizontal lines here, because I want this to be, I always try to find the most crisp lines as possible in order to go down, so it reads it as clearly as possible. So there you go. So it should straighten up a little bit. Cool. Now, once that's done, I'm actually going to do another 2 lines. I'm going to do here. And then I'm going to do, ooh, you are crazy. I'm going to do here. No, I should just done the 2. Okay. So we're going to do that. So good. So now it's not like as tilty. So that's good. All right. And then now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead. I love the highlights right now. I want to go ahead and move up my midtones. And I'm going to actually kind of, I want to darken those highlights a little bit. Okay. Sweet. I love that. And I actually even like I like how it's like currently looking right now, like with the color. All right. So what I might do is I might darken the saturation just a bit to get that blue. Okay, sweet. And now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add some, and I'm going to hit 1 here. And the reason why I'm going to do that is I'm going to go ahead and just say this is 1 star. I know, generally speaking, 5 stars is supposed to be the best and 1 star is supposed to be the worst, I guess. If, you know, 0 star is the worst, but I like to hit 1 because at that point, it's just the closest to the left. It's the easiest one for me to hit. And so then at the very end, I end up exporting all of my 1 stars. I very rarely ever use like 5. So I'm a 1-2 star kind of girl. So 1 star is better. So for me, the more stars, the worse the image is. I'm so opposite in my than everybody else. Okay, cool. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to do radial. Let's see. And of course, what I ended up doing, just so you guys know, I made my radial pink. I made my you can change this in your settings however you guys want this to be. But essentially what I'm doing over here is that I kind of like how warm the picture is. I like that we have this light coming over. I really kind of want to accentuate like just how dreamy that is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to decrease the haze a little bit, kind of make it a little dreamy. I'm going to make it a little bit more warm. There you go. Love it. And maybe a little, all right. And then let's look at our before and after. Okay, sweet. So I'm loving where that's going. So that's number one. I don't really need to edit any more of those. Okay, so now we're going to move in to some of the more beautiful ones. All right. So essentially, whenever I'm photographing, I always start kind of in the middle. And I have this wide angle lens. I have a 24-75, and that's where I'm shooting. Whenever I'm a photographer for an event like this, I have to be very conscious as to when I am moving, right? I can't move in the middle of the song. I don't want to move in the middle of the song. I want to move when everybody is clapping. So therefore, like that's when I'm going down and up the rows. So, and whenever I'm shooting, I want to make sure that like I always try to frame the person. Like I want to make it interesting. I want there to be angles, because if every single shot that I do is, from the back of the room and is this more like, wide angle, it's not going to be nearly as fun. In general, it's not. Okay. So let's go ahead. We're going to move to this one, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how I'm going to kind of edit in the center, and we're going to edit on the outside. Okay. So I'm going to do radial again. I like the radial just because in general, like it's the easiest to kind of just grab and go. Sweet. And then from there, I'm going to go ahead and kind of bring those highlights down just a hair. Sweet. And then I'm going to go here. I'm going to bring up those shadows just a wee bit. I'm going to make it a little bit more warm. Here's the one thing whenever you're shooting like reverb mic, just climb on stage. You have no idea how much I actually wanted to do that. Like, oh my gosh, I'm like, it would be so much better if I was just able to climb on stage. So one of the things with concert photography is that like you kind of have to just throw natural skin tones out the door. Like just there's so many different artificial coloring that's happening here. Like we're not going to be looking for natural skin tones here. People are generally going to be warm, if anything. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to, go up to that. Now, the lighting person they're in charge of making sure that all these lights are harmonious. However, you and I with Lightroom can definitely play around with what that's going to look like, right? So that means that I can go into my purples and I can definitely kind of change the hues of these if I want it to be a little bit different. I can go into my split toning, which is also really nice. All right, so I'm going to go into my oranges here. I'm actually thinking I'm going to have my oranges to be a little bit more orangey, because I just love, and then I love the like how orange and purple plays well together. And then from there, I'm going to add a little bit more glow. So normally I do typically add some blues in my blacks anyway, but it depends upon if I'm going to do like lifestyle, and normally it's just going to be a little bit, right? Like I just like I don't want those blacks to be just like so black. I want there to be some character to the black. But whenever we're shooting concert photography, we can actually make that split toning way more extreme. This is definitely one of those scenarios where more color actually works really, really well. And I mean, you can see I can go to purple, or this is like red. Green would look really interesting. Also, sometimes people end up using split toning, believe it or not, in order to color correct. All right. So because again, I really love purples and yellows and blues and yellows and purples and oranges and blues and yellows together. I end up even kind of putting more into that. Okay. And then of course, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to straighten this out. And this is definitely one of those things where this is a bit of a hassle to do. So you only really kind of pick your favorite ones to do this with. So, and as soon as that does that, it's going to kind of calculate it, and then it's going to make it straight for us, which is going to be nice. Let's see, and I'm going to do this up here. Again, I always try to find like the highest contrast. Sweet. All right, that looks good. All right. One of the things I wanted to show you guys is the grids. Now, sometimes whenever you're like shooting images and you, let's say you want to try to do like a different crop. So let's go into like this one. Okay. So I have this image. Again, we're going to color correct this image to kind of show you what it would look like. But if I go into my crop tool and I hit O, I can actually cycle through different grids in order for me to crop within that grid, which I thought was really neat. And I like this one because this one kind of shows you what a 4:5 or a 5:7 like ratio would be even before you even change it. So, but for this one, he's squarely in the center, which is great. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stick with. Okay, now this is a good image for us to play with even more. Okay, so again, notice that his skin tone is just, it's definitely not like what you would say a natural skin tone is. Now, if I skewed it to be a natural skin tone, this is what it would look like. And I think that you end up losing a lot of the character. So I'm going to actually go back to a little bit more red or a little bit more warm. What I'm going to do is I'm going to desat the oranges a little bit in this one, just so like for his skin specifically, in order for it to be a little bit better. And I realized I forgot the enabled. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now, once you end up doing a edit that you really super like, you can essentially click, Command C and then Command V, and you can copy and paste all of those edits and just, batch set all of those adjustments that if you want to. Okay, well, let's say this is going to be the direction that I want to go in. Okay, this blue, and now this is where I can kind of play, right? So this is where your artistic license kind of can come in a little bit. So I adjusted that blue. I want this red to actually be a little bit more orange. I'm going to highlight this a little bit more here. I'm going to add a little bit more blue in my, there you go. That's looking good. My highlights, let's see, let's put some, there you go. All righty, let's see. And I'm going to definitely decrease some of this highlights. The highlights is definitely impacting his skin tone. And then I'm going to make a little tiny S curve in order to kind of crispen, make this a little bit more contrasty. Okay, cool. And then I actually feel like there's a little bit more magenta in there than I want it to be. So I'm going to drop down that to the green. All right, sweet. So now that I have like the base edit down, now I can end up doing a little bit more to it, right? So this is where, let's say I wanted to go back, I want to do radial. And I'm like, you know what? I kind of want this to be a little bit more punchy. So I'm going to bring that in. Again, I'm going to dehaze. Not that much. Okay. And then I can even make this, more blue if I want, just to kind of add. And I love how everything drops out. So if I want to too, what I can do is I can go, you know what? I'm going to select the subject. So if you guys don't know, Lightroom does have like an automatic subject or automatic like background selection. And so essentially I selected that. Now it's going to do an auto detect. And whenever it does that, it's going to, for the most part, show me the new mask. All right. That's a pretty good mask. Okay. I'm pretty impressed with that. Now I can make him more warm and kind of see how that goes. Or I can make him more cool. There you go. And then maybe I can even play around with his light just a tad more. Now I can also hit invert. If I hit invert, that end up playing with the background instead. So now I'm going to hit invert. And now let's go ahead and let's just like change the background. Look at that. So that's if I went all the way cool to all the way warm. I have to say, I definitely like what it looks like when it's warm. All right. I can also duplicate mask 2. And then I'm going to not invert it. Okay. And then, yeah, not invert. There you go. And now it's just on him. And now I can warm him up if I want. Or cool him off, actually, is what I was doing. Okay. Sweet. So, all right. So I like that. So one thing when you're shooting concerts, you're going to have that backlight, right? So normally whenever you're shooting light, or whenever you're like a studio light, you normally have a main light, which is the light that's in front, right? So he would be, there's kind of like a main light here. And then you end up having, it's called rim light, which is a light that ends up separating the person from the back. Now, when you're shooting in a scenario like this, right, where you don't have control over like what people look like or like how you're going to shoot, right? So for instance, and on top of that, you have no idea when the fog is going to happen. So your like your settings, if I'm shooting manually, needs to change like wildly. So you kind of have to figure out like a middle in order for that to be like, okay, this is the direction that I'm going to stay in. But for instance, so this rim light that's in the back, you can kind of see it behind Mr. Okimoto. He has played with Spock's beard for a really, really super long time. He's an amazing, like he was so many keyboards. It's like so cool. Anyway, so with him or with anybody, I always kind of try to frame his head like right where the light is. I don't want the light to be like, this is one of those where it's like, this is overexposed, but I absolutely love it. Because to me, it really kind of shows like the atmosphere. But I like to have their heads generally like right, like blocking the light, because then you end up having this beautiful light that's like shining through their head. And these guys, oh my gosh. So this is a really good example. Like, because if it's so close to the light like this, it ends up being the thing that you look at. Right. But if I can block the individual with the light, it ends up being where that is the thing that draws the eye. All right. So this is a really great photo. So, and on top of that, this group, they call themselves Project. So it's like project, but it's Project. They are progressive rock. So if you guys know anything about progressive rock, it's definitely, while there is a structure around it. Hello, Sean, good to see you. While there's a structure in and around it, there's a lot of experimentation. There's a lot of exploration. So therefore, what that means is that there is the lighting guy and I... we don't necessarily know what's going to happen next, right? Like, we don't know, like, okay, is there going to be a solo? Is there going to be, like this person is the lead singer? Like, we didn't really know any of this stuff. So therefore the lighting was always spontaneous in order for it to kind of keep an ebb and flow with these artists. And so it's not like we're singing, like Free Bird, and we all know the song to that. We all know, like who's going to sing it. So there was just a spontaneity kind of that was in the air. And so what that meant was that there was a lot of like me trying to figure out like, okay, Where does the focus need to be right now? And on top of that, all of these players ended up staying right where they were. There was very little interaction, and all the lighting, even though it did change and it pulsated, there was no like central spotlight on one individual where everything else was dark, right? So you ended up having the set that was just a wash. And it was, I mean, just absolutely beautiful. So this is a series of 3 images that I got like right back to back to back. And I have to say, I definitely, while I love the light of that one, I think I'm going to stick with this one. All right. So this is where we are with this one. Okay. And this is just a lot of playing. This is going like, okay, if I'm going to be underexposed or overexposed, like I would rather err on the overexposed. So this was right. This one was shot with my 135 millimeter 2.0. So which is why it has some really nice bokeh to it. And then it was over off to the side in order not to be in the way of everybody else. Okay. So the first thing that I'm going to do, as you guys know, I'm going to go down to my remove and enable lens correction. So that automatically will brighten it up even more around the edges. All right, from there, I just want to explore. I want to see what happens when I hit the highlights, when I bring those down. Now, as you can tell, there is definitely some haze here. So I can actually go to Dehaze. And you can kind of see that haze kind of comes out. Now, here's the thing, is that I kind of like the haze, but I do think that there needs to be kind of less of it. So in order to fix that, what I can actually do, and I'm going to turn my auto mask off, is I'm just going to kind of cover over him. Again, I giggle with my pink. How many people since I've started streaming has changed the colors of their masking tool? Once you realized, oh, you can change the color of that? What color is yours if you changed it? Okay. All right. So I don't need a lot. I just need a little bit. Maybe I have a little bit over here. Okay, sweet. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to dehaze over here. I'm going to just dehaze our gentleman. Just a hair. And then I also think I'm going to cool him off a little bit. And I think I might need to desat him a little bit too. Because essentially, like, as you guys can probably tell, is what's happening when you dehaze is a lot more like saturation is coming in. Cody says, I haven't changed mine, but I love your pink mask. Thanks, Cody. All right, I'm just coloring it a little bit more. Just making sure that I get it. All right, sweet. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to go back here and we're going to start playing with color a little bit. But I absolutely just love just how focused this is and how atmospheric this one is. It has a great, it just has a great ambiance to this particular image. Hey, Robert, glad to see you here. Hope you're doing great, man. Ooh. Okay, we're back here. I need to also pick one. I'm playing with you. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add some blues. It looks so good. Does anybody else add colors to their shadows, or is it just me? I might end up adding. Oh, I love that. Actually, I might keep that the way that is, but just keep this dark. Ooh. I am loving this. Okay. Now what I want to do now is I want to add a little bit of contrast. I'm going to go back into my curves. I'm going to bring these shadows down. And I'm going to actually bring my midtones down too. Normally I don't do that. Normally I end up like amping up my midtones because I definitely want there to be some, you know, some lighter. Okay, and then from here, if I really like this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to duplicate this photo. And I'm going to put set compare. Because at this point, what I want to do is I want to see if I make any changes, what's going to happen, right? Like, am I going to like one way or the other better? Now, as you guys know, purples and oranges, purples and yellows, I absolutely love that tonality together. So it just makes natural sense that I would add that to this photo. But you know what? We gotta play a little bit more. We gotta push this. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm just gonna hit this to go all the way warm and see what happens. And then I'm gonna go all the way, not all the way, but to the blues to see what that happens. Robert goes bluish, grayish, or violetish. Oh, I have to say, I kind of like what happens when this is cool. I have to say, ooh, I think I love that tonality right there. Essentially, it's the same thing. It's just a little bit colder. That looks awesome. And I'm going to add a little contrast to it. Beautiful. All right. And now let's go and look at the sharpening. All right. So I'm going to. All right. So I'm hitting Option with my mask. And I'm trying to get to where I'm at the outlines. There you go. In order to kind of sharpen that for me a little bit. This is beautiful. I absolutely love these colors. Okay. Sweet. I think that's it. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to click off that one. I would say that's done. Done. Okay. So now let's go back to this one. So Mr. Mover is his name. Actually forgot what his first name is. But again, he was one of the drummers for Alice Cooper. As you guys know, a lot of these artists, what they end up doing, or these musicians, they will move from, you know, artist to artist. Sometimes they will stay with an artist and record multiple discographies with them, you know, and that's definitely what has happened here with Mr. Mover. But anyway, it's just so cool to hear their experiences. Absolutely. Sean asked, Alicia, will you be at Max? Unfortunately, I will not be at Max this year. So Mr. Mover, he played with AC/DC. This dude is a pro. So I was back in the back, you know, kind of like off the screen. He has like over here on the right-hand side. I mean, these are those beautiful chimes that, you know, he's like chiming on. He has, I mean, I feel like if you had a drum set times like multiplied by 3, that's what he had in front of him. I mean, like his riser was full of percussive instruments. And he didn't miss a beat. And when he saw me, he just stared at me and like made sure that I got the photo, you know, and I gave him a thumbs up, and then he smiled, and then he went back to his thing. But of course, this whole entire time while he smiled at me, he's still going. So I absolutely love shooting this particular concert series just for these little micro interactions that I end up getting with musicians that otherwise I would never get to meet or even hear like personally. Okay. So this was just a really cool experience. Okay, so the first thing I did again is the enable correction. I'm going to go ahead. I don't want to duplicate two photos. I just want to duplicate this one. So I'm going to duplicate this photo because essentially I want you guys to see like what ends up happening, kind of like where we started from. All right, and so this one I'm going to actually go ahead and turn off. Boop, boop. All right, so that's kind of, yeah, it's kind of opposite. But the right-hand one is going to be my original, and my left-hand one is going to be the one that I edit with. Okay, so automatically you can already see whenever I enabled the camera correction, it did lighten up the image. It always will do that. Just so you know, for the most part, every single time I've done it, it always has done that. Okay. So the first thing that I want to go ahead and do is I want to, again, kind of get the exposure correct a little bit more, kind of bring in these highlights a little bit more so they're not like, there you go. And then I want to just get a little contrast going. You can kind of see here in my highlights that they're like I don't really have like black. Because you can kind of see that in my histogram right there, it has gone up. Hi has a fox behind his ears. Okay. All righty. So essentially I brought this back over in order for those darks to kind of come. I do feel like this might be a little bit too dark now right here. So what I'll end up doing is kind of go back and we can fix that really quick. All right, sweet. So now we can definitely see like while this was the color that was happening. So again, one of the things that I made sure is that I am 100% manual for everything. So that means even whenever I'm shooting this, I'm making sure that my colors are consistent, because if you guys have like auto color correction, God knows what your images would look like in a constant series, because like your images are like, everything is just constantly changing. So what I do like about this is that I can kind of make this one correction and end up copying and pasting all of these edits for like all these adjustments to all my other ones. And for the most part, they're all going to work out really, really well. Now there are going to be some that I end up being a little bit more particular just because I feel like these are the extra special images. And so at that point, these are going to be a little bit more like edited like these are right now. Okay. So we have this really coral color happening right here. So I'm just wondering like what happens if we bring this to blue? Oh, we get our purple that I like. All right. What happens when we do orange? Nope. So we're definitely going to warm this up a little bit. All right, now I definitely feel like it's a little bit too magenta. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little green here. There you go. And now that definitely has a little bit more of a natural color. Now I definitely still see some magenta, but at the same time, we're on a concert set. There's crazy colors flying around. That's natural. That's what's going to happen. All right. So I'm going to do a little bit more green. All right. I love it. I love it. I love it. All right, let's add some colors. Let's do the split toning. Okay, and let's go a little warm in the midtones. I like it. Okay, sweet. So now what I want to do now is going to add a little contrast. All right. Sweet. All right, so it is much better. Definitely like it better that's going on. All right, so let's go into the crop tool. So again, remember, if you guys just hit 0, you have these different crop overlays that come up and you can just kind of cycle through it. Right. So one of the things that I'm wondering is like, what would it be like if I just like, you know, kind of cropped in or kind of got rid of that? Like, could I get him in the center? But before I do that, let's go ahead and see if I can lighten this up a little bit, lighten up this particular pole right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to brush this, make sure that my auto mask is off, because again, I kind of want this to be a little feathered. Okay, and now I have that. I'm just going to lift the shadows off that a little bit more and lift the blacks. Because I mean, I like that it adds kind of like this detail, but at the same time, I don't like it being so dark, because essentially anything that you have light and dark together, it's going to end up stealing the visual interest. In order to maintain this, like the visual interest on Mr. Mover here, I want to make sure that like this is diminished. I can also make it a little bit more warm, or I can make it a little bit more cool. I think I might just cool it off a little bit. So if you guys remember in color theory, warm brings things forward, cool things, bring things back into the background. So even though I have, even though that is in the foreground, if I cool it off, it will actually end up receding a little bit more in the back, which is what I like. Okay. And then from here, if there's any particular colors that I want to play with, like let's say like these, this red, I wanted to change maybe to be a little bit more coral or a little bit more subdued. I could do that. And I have blues back here. I always like kind of amping up the blue anyway, because the blue always ends up sitting in the back. Sweet. So I would definitely say like that's a big difference between what it was, which is on the right-hand side, and now where it lands on the left-hand side. For sure. Okay, so let's go ahead. We're going to go back into single. All right, and then towards the end of the show, they brought Thomas out. So this whole entire time, because Thomas doesn't play, Thomas is not a progressive rock musician at all. He is 100% a just a rock guy. Like he has such a large genre that he plays. He tours and he plays in hard rock cafes like all over the United States. But yeah, so anyway, so when the progressive rock musicians were playing, for the most part, it was all of them. And then they brought out with this one particular tune. So as soon as they brought him out, I was like, holy moly, I got to make sure that I take a lot of photos. So, and then on top of that, I wanted to make sure that I captured like some of his guitars. So here are some that we created or that I created. I wanted to make sure that I captured his guitar because he said that was pretty important. And then you can kind of notice how I'm trying to frame him here. So, because this is kind of what I was talking about. I absolutely love it when I can put him behind, like in front of the lights versus like right next to the lights, because I feel what ends up happening is that the person's eyeball goes right here. So again, this is one of those things where like when you're shooting, you have to figure out what is in the background that's going to be visually complex, that is going to remove or take away from the story that you're trying to communicate, right? So I knew like while I really love the lights, they could really, really detract from what I'm doing. Oh, he wanted a picture of the speaker. Product placement. So I got that. Yeah. So you can kind of see like I kept trying to like move over to get him behind that light. But then as soon as the haze started showing up, then at that point it was like, oh, game on. I am 100% fan of the haze. Okay. And then this guy here had like so many guitars. I tried to like capture that, but that was insane. So anyway, so this is towards the end of the set and it was just really fun. So they always kind of like look at each other to figure out like when they're going to end. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and start. All right. Sweet. So, and then towards the end, what I ended up doing, let's see if I can pull these up for you guys. All right. Was the experimental ones. Okay. So as you guys saw at the very beginning, I ended up doing, let's see, I can probably bring those up again. Where's preview? Oh, no, I can't. Never mind. I was going to show you guys the double exposure images. So what I wanted to do here is I wanted to see what would it look like if I ended up having a tripod. So I did. So I like to bring a tripod in order to do some of these photos and have kind of, that's how I do the double exposure. That's how I ended up doing these kind of like time lapses, because I wanted to create like, what does it look like when we have movement on the stage, but at the same time, everything else is kind of standing still? Like, would that be a cool image? And so I put this on a stand and I ended up going everywhere from like, only, I think this was like maybe 1 second of like a long exposure, all the way to, I think one of these was like 30 seconds. And it was just like, whoa, okay. Maybe that's a little bit too much. And so anyway, notice I didn't do the experimental ones at the very beginning. I want to make sure that I shot the right thing first. And then as soon as I knew that I had plenty of the baseline images, then at that point, that's when it kind of opens up to where I can explore and I can really test all the different like creative elements that I can do in camera. General Kenobi says, good, twice the exposure, double the light. Okay, so I do like this one. I think it's really fun. So let's just kind of cycle through them. I would say I like the first one. I like this one a lot because you can see that he has 3 heads. So there's definitely some movement there. Because one of the things that I realized is that if you do this like too far away, I think this one is awesome. If you do it too far away, it ends up being where like you can't see anything. But then when you get close, so I was trying to do it, I think here with my 74. And again, this is like, I had to do like f-stop of like, I think I was in the 30s. It was like f-stop. If you guys know anything about photography, f-stop is like you're hardly getting any light in, right? Is a really, 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 really tiny hole. So I was like f-stop like 32, I think, ISO of 100. And then I ended up having to have like a shutter speed of like 30 seconds in order to get the light. But you can kind of just see like how insane everything is, like in like, and these people are pretty still. The depth that they had like which was insane. But I think these are just so fun. And it's some captures that, oh, I like this one a lot. This is some captures that generally speaking, artists will never end up having. No, ISO of 100, boo-boo. General Kenobi was like, of 1,000,000? Nope. Shutter speed, 30 seconds. Yeah, it was insane. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's edit this one. This one is pretty fun. Let's see like what we can end up like creating. And again, you can kind of see their name here. Progjet. Anyway, they're touring all over. If you guys are interested in what progressive music sounds like 100% look them up, Google them, because they are probably coming toward like in a city towards you for sure. Unless you live in Germany. Sorry, Sean, they're probably not, or like, I don't even know where you are right now. I just know you're off in like far off in distant lands. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead. We're gonna like, oh yeah. So the first thing that I need to do. Okay. So I did that. Sweet. Kind of like punch that center out. Sweet. I'm actually gonna have that frog jet, right? I love this. I think this is gonna be so cool. I think this is gonna be like one of their favorite images, honestly. All right, let's lift up this. Let's lift up that a little bit. I'm going to go ahead. Now, if you guys do have any questions, we are kind of narrowing down the end of the stream. So if you guys have like any concert questions for me specifically, but I do, gosh, I want to look at this. Look at all of these. Like this dude had an astronomical amount of guitars. Like it was insane. I was like, how do you even, of course you're a professional musician. I would imagine that you would have like 100 guitars, right? But the fact that you had like 10 that you were like going and changing throughout the course of this thing. And there's like 2 other guitar, like there's he's a bass guy, I guess. Anyway, it was just absolutely amazing. It was amazing. Oliver, he said, I don't think I've ever gone as small as F32. Dude, I didn't even know F32 was an option. I just kept going until it stopped. Oh, it was so funny. Oh, so funny. Okay. All right. I love this. All right. Yeah, let's, I think I might want a little, okay. All right. Do we want it to be a little bit, oh, you know me, purples. I like purple. I don't try to have all the images, especially here. It's like, I'm not going to change because you guys can see over here, I have some like green sets. I'm not going to try to like make the green purple, right? But if I can get some like somewhat of a synergistic feel whenever you're looking at the gallery, I'd definitely like to do that. Okay. Oh, I like this. I started moving that blue into a teal because I feel like that was more of the same. So moving this blue more into a teal definitely makes it feel like very good. All right, cool. And then let's see, can I move this red? And I mean, at this point, this is just subjection, right? This is just, hey, this is what I like. Other people might not like this. Hopefully Thomas likes this because he's the one who hired me. I don't even know if any lenses can go that small. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that is super green. It's like almost like a green screen, right? It's like, what is happening here? All right, I want to add some blues. I'm going to add some yellows. Let's add some greens. There we go. Kind of magenta this out a little bit. Ooh, that looks good. All right, cool. Let's go into my sharpening. Again, I'm holding my mask down. That's so funny. There you go. There you go. We'll do that. Yep. And we will sharpen that up a little bit. Because I really 100% want to like the things that are still and crisp. Because I mean, if you look at this really quickly, you're going to be like, oh man, everything's like, you know, like it's blurry. This is a mistake, right? So in order to make that like ensure that doesn't like register on people's brains, I really want to make sure that they see like, oh, everything is in focus and crisp except for the people. And then at that point, I think it'll be really cool for people to be like, oh, that's really cool. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to copy this. And then I'm going to move to one of my favorite ones. I think that was where I saw, let's see, this one right here. And I'm just going to like, so this was completely different, right? So this one is a yellow and purple one. The previously, it was more blue and purple. So I'm just going to hit paste just to see really the change of all that. So there you go. So you can kind of see how like with these particular colors, it really isn't a 1-for-1. There definitely has to be some individual nuances. So with what was I going to say? So with like, I would say like lifestyle photography or like studio photography, where you kind of control the lighting and all the work is kind of upfront, but you do a lot of like editing in the background. And it's a different kind of editing. Here, I didn't do any work up front, right? I didn't bring my lighting. I didn't bring like my white card. You know, it's pretty much just like I am framing and I'm shooting. I'm making sure that I have interesting compositions, interesting lines, interesting techniques, clean exposures as much as possible. But a lot of my time is actually going to be spent more in the editing phase in order to make sure that everything kind of looks synergistic, right? So with this one, I definitely am not going to be able to keep it just like a simple clean and paste, like copy and paste. So I'll probably have to go back, look at my blue ones, go like, okay, this is my setting for my blue ones. Cool. And then, you know, paste those adjustments there. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to just cool this back off. But I do love this a lot. As you can just see, like the movement, right? You can't even see this guy's arms. Mr. Mover doesn't have arms. He's moving so much, you know, and then of course we got towards the end. So this has been super fun to kind of look through all of these images with you. This was honestly the first time that I saw a lot of them because I shot them quite literally last night. And then I ended up uploading them and then going to bed because as you understand, and as you know, concerts end up lasting so long into the night. And it's one of those things where it's like you get there, you have a set amount of time, and then you end up always staying over. As you guys know, that's what ends up happening. So again, if you guys have any questions, hit me up. And I'm going to go. So we had the blue one before. I'm going to go ahead and paste the blue one here just for us to see. And it definitely worked a lot better. Now I definitely still need to work on some highlights here because you can see that things are just a little bit overexposed. So I'm definitely going to bring that down a bit and probably a tad dehaze too. But yeah, it's just so cool to watch masters. So again, if you guys are interested, make sure that you look up Project, which is Project. Check that out. They are touring all over. So it'd be really cool for you to experience these amazing musicians firsthand, because again, progressive rock, it's all experimental, all explorative, and it's just amazing to see all these people jam together so expertly. So guys, thank you so much for your time, and I hope to see you again, and make sure that you stay around for the next stream, because they're going to be doing some outdoor natural lifestyle photography and showing you the ins and outs of shooting that and editing. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.